All right. So, Joanna, thank you so much for agreeing to do the call with me. I'm very happy to have you on. It's Joanna Rajendren, if I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, you rocked it.
Okay, awesome. I just want to say how I found you, because I found you because I think Tony Robbins had posted a link about you writing this book, and he had a picture with Tao Porchon-Lynch. And for those that don't know her, she was known as many things, but one of which was the world's oldest yoga teacher. And she was, I think, a dancer. She's quite flexible physically. She was how old when she died?
101.
101. And she was considered a yoga master. She was an activist, an actress, a dancer, a model, a producer, and a writer. So she was, definitely you could call her a guru. And Joanna, you wrote the book, My Guru Wears Heels. And I just love that name, because I think anyone who hears that name, it just sparks a smile right away. Like it's awesome. So for those who didn't know her, she was just this wonderful, she had a beautiful presence, and I'm sure you will explain more about her, but she's quite an impressive woman. She's vibrant, sexy, confident, free. She just radiates happiness in all that she does and all that she said every time I've seen her on interviews and things like that. So, and I think someone actually wrote about her being called like the real life Forrest Gump. So, and I'm sure you have more to share, but before we jump into Tao's influence on the world, can you share a little bit more about you and your passions and purpose?
Absolutely. And thank you, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me today. It is my time with Tao taught me what my mission was in this lifetime. And it is, simply put, to help as many people as possible live their best life ever. So I really appreciate opportunities to talk about my mission, to share that with the world, to share Tao with the world, and keep the torch of her flame lit longer than her time on this earth. So this means so much to me. And I met Tao when I was 17. So I am now 44. I spent more of my life with her than without her. And as you mentioned, she passed away at 101 right before COVID. So a lot of my life and who I am as a woman, a businesswoman, a mom, a wife, a friend, a teacher, a mentor was really influenced and shaped by this special relationship. So in my time with her, she certified me to become a yoga instructor and to teach in her style. And I loved doing that, and I still do. I'm appreciating what I'm doing now because it's brought me to a different lane, which is more general and where I feel like I can touch more lives this way. When it's not yoga specific and it's really for the world, yogi or non-yogi, even though I secretly think everyone's a yogi, it helps me bring the message to where the individual is. And the message is really simple, that our mind is everything. The thoughts become things, the habits become our lifestyle. Our lifestyle shapes who we believe we are at our core, what our character is. So whereas a couple of years ago, I was probably teaching more than I was coaching, now it's shifted. And ever since I've written the book, it's been such an honor to do more keynote speaking, mindset coaching, workshops, and I really look forward to the next few books that I already have in my mind and on my heart.
Okay. Oh, that's very exciting. And it's actually, it's just fascinating how you're spreading not only her wisdom, but also you've probably inherited and gleaned a lot along the way as well. And you're just influencing so many people in the world with this. So it's amazing. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I'm happy to have you on. So can you tell me what prompted you to write the book? Obviously you want to share more, but if you can give more information, that would be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. So since I mentioned I met Tao when I was 17, I was very aware immediately that this was a really significant relationship in my life. You know how sometimes it's nostalgia that we look back and we realize how significant something was? This was something I knew in the moment. When you were in her presence, she sparkled. There was this twinkle in her eye, this childlike wonder that she kept her entire life. And you mentioned that Tao was a dancer. She started competing in ballroom dance competitions in her late 80s because she wanted a new challenge. So she was so inspirational as this living example. Yoga was such a male-dominated aspect of life for most of her life. And it's so nice to celebrate this powerful, peaceful, incredible woman who really influenced yoga as a profession, as a lifestyle, as a discipline, and was considered a master teacher, but never locked herself into one thing. The fact that she was an example of somebody who really was like Forrest Gump. I always said that she was instrumental in all these moments in history, marching with Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., and was an activist in World War II, and a dancer, a writer, an actress. She was in a film with Elvis Presley, and she was in shows with Bob Hope, and she was the muse of different couture designers. So she had this really amazing life. I mean, at one point, they tried to, almost before pop culture was a thing and the internet was a thing, they tried to start this story saying that Tao said that Marilyn Monroe wasn't very sexy. And Marilyn Monroe actually heard about this, contacted Tao and said, "Oh, darling, you should just be worried if they're not talking about you. Don't worry about this." So all of these amazing little moments where her lifetime was interwoven with other moments in history were really significant. So in my time with her, one of my favorite stories was we were on a train to an ashram. And actually, I think we were on the way home. And I was a little sleepy because I'm a mere mortal and she never got sleepy. So at one point I probably looked like I was about to fall asleep. And Tao said something about Marlene Dietrich throwing her a party when she finished filming something. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, dear. Are you tired? You could go to sleep." And I looked at her like a little kid and I was like, "Tao, no one else in my life starts a story with Marlene Dietrich threw me a party, so I can take a nap later. Can you please continue?" So in all of these years with her, in these stories that she would tell, the workshops that she would teach, the classes she would lead, every single time I would learn something new. And luckily, I have this weird thing that now my son has at the age of 3, which is I remember dialogue. So often when people read the book, they'll ask me, "Were you taking notes the whole time? How'd you remember all of this?" And these were really significant moments and lessons that I would learn, and they stayed with me. So I would tell my husband for years, "I know I'm supposed to write a book about Tao. I just don't know what it's supposed to be or how to convey the magic and do it justice." And I would share this with Tao and she would always dismiss it, wondering if she was even interesting enough, which was the irony of it all. And she would say things like, "Oh dear, you're so great with children. You should write a book for kids." And I said, "Yes, and I plan to. Thanks, Tao. But specifically, I need to share everything I've learned from you, with the world." And she would dismissively say, that's nice, that's sweet. So then you got to love how the universe works. Sometimes when you're really interested in doing something and you believe it, you see it into fruition, but you also practice non-attachment in the way that allows you to receive it.
Without expectation.
Yes. I was getting a foot massage with my husband on a surprise date. And at the end of it, I started hitting him and I said, "I got it." And he was like, "Okay, what do you got?" I said, "I know exactly the book I'm meant to write about my friendship with Tao. I know how it's supposed to go. I know that each chapter is meant to start with one of her quotes, one of her philosophies, and that I'll go back and forth between the timelines of our lives and show how the same philosophies shaped these two different women generations apart." I said, "It all came to me. It's flowing. I know the entire book now." And I said, "Let's go home. I have to write it." And he said, "Put it in your phone. The next part of our date is to go see Justin Timberlake so you can write it after." So we did that. We went to see Justin Timberlake. He was amazing. And I just felt so grateful that this I received it, I channeled it as much as I wrote it.
Oh, that's stunning. And it just warms my heart, like how much of an impact and presence she has on the world, and how much you are sharing that. And also you've got a lot of wisdom to add as well to that. So that's stunning. So how did you actually meet each other? And how did you said from the moment you met her, you knew it was impactful.
It was really special. And I always like to say in any conversation that I have about Tao, I was truly blessed, and I am not by any means the only one. She had an incredible, special relationship with people she met for one moment, with people she never met, like you, who just felt her love and magic. And then with her friends, with her community, she considered all of the students that she certified to be her children. So I do feel very lucky. And then as she got older, there was an inner circle that she would allow to drive her to her dance rehearsals, that would bring her lunch and sit with her. So while I feel always and forever blessed, I always like to say that I'm blessed and I'm not the only one. So I share this love and this commitment to carrying on her torch with so many, and it's a place of honor. So when I was 17, Lindsay, I was going through a darker moment in my life. I had been raped, amongst other things that had happened. And it was a season where I did not feel present. I did not feel connected. I did not feel in my body. And then I had a moment. I had a moment while I was traveling where I had that first glimpse. And I don't know if you or anyone who watches this can relate to that, where sometimes it happens when we're with someone we love, or when we're in nature, where all of a sudden we feel connected to the divinity of everything. And I had one of those moments while I was traveling. And when I came back, I decided I wanted to take a yoga class, not because of one of those divine moments, because of an article I read about Madonna doing it, and she looked really strong and was doing a cool headstand. So I thought, why not? And I started yoga, and the second class I ever took in my local gym, I walked in and Tao was seated in the front. I saw high heels at the front door. I saw this cute little older woman sitting in the front, and I thought, she's adorable, because I have this thing where I break for older people. And I'm like, wow, she's the cutest person I've ever seen in my life. I did not think that she would kick my butt. I didn't think I was going to get the Madonna experience that I read about. Yeah. But when I saw her, I thought, I love her already. And she was sitting in the front of the classroom in full lotus. So if people aren't familiar, that's when your feet look like a pretzel and each foot is on top of the opposite knee. And I was always really flexible. So I sat in front of her and I did the exact same thing and silently congratulated myself for being an expert at yoga. So she noticed me. And the first time she noticed me, our eyes connected, and I just felt this charge, this sparkle. She got up and she walked over to me and she said, "That's very nice, but it isn't yoga." And I looked shocked, and I probably showed on my face. And she said, "You could, let me guess, you could probably do that your whole life, right?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You'll see." And that's all she said in the beginning of the class. And I talk about this in the book when we first meet, that in the first time she had us go into a forward fold, I was surprised that I couldn't touch the floor because I already thought I was an expert. And the second time throughout the class, my fingers tickled the floor. By the end of the class, my hands were flat on the floor. And that gave me the first inkling of what was possible. When we used our breath, when we were in our bodies in a whole different way, when we breathed through our bodies, when we really experienced that connection of mind, body, spirit all together, that union, that yog, which is Sanskrit, and for union, which is where the word yoga comes from, I felt it, and I really got what she was saying, that my coming already bendy had nothing to do with what the practice of yoga was going to offer in my life. And in that moment, I just thought, wherever she's going, I'm following. And the shocking part, which she always shared with me and was never lost on me, the magic and the gratitude that I feel, was in that moment, she said she always knew that we were supposed to do things together. So I was so grateful to have her mentorship from that time, from being 17 up until a year and a half ago, and still to just have her light, her love, her humor as this guiding force in my life. It was the kind of gift that if I kept it for myself, it would have felt like a really selfish choice. So now being able to share her and continue to do so forever with the world is my biggest dream come true.
Yeah, I can see that, and it's so beautiful. And every story you're telling me, I'm getting teary-eyed. It's awesome. So, tell me, are there some teachings that you'd like to at least summarize that you'd like to share with the world of Tao's?
Well, in terms of practical teaching, like the yoga aspect of it, Tao was she was one of the first women to study with BKS Iyengar, and she studied with Pattabhi Jois. Iyengar, he founded Iyengar style, and Pattabhi Jois Ashtanga. So it was really cool that she always had these different influences of style, and that she took what she learned from these masters and really made them her own. So from Iyengar, for example, she really focused on the form, and she was a stickler for form because she wanted people to practice safely within their own bodies. She never thought that one cue was appropriate for everybody in the world, because every body has different bodies. And from Pattabhi Jois, she loved how you could feel when the people were breathing in his studio in Mysore, you could feel the breath move the walls. So she grew up in India, and she loved how she would watch people do their sun salutations, and she knew what part of India that they were from. So her way of teaching and her unique style with the emphasis on form, yet teaching with joy, with ananda, with bliss, you could feel her magic and you could feel her strength. My husband is 6'4". He's a really big, tall guy. And when he would come to class, he was always amazed because Tao would support his whole body weight as she would assist him. Her strength was so incredible, but it was matched with the peace and the light and the beauty. So some of my favorite things that I learned from Tao, and as I mentioned, each chapter starts with one of these, so please don't feel like you have to remember them. But some of my favorite things were the simplest. She lived by her motto of there is nothing we cannot do. She also believed in energy, not age. And my single favorite was that she woke up every single day and said, this is the best day of my life. So just think.
We all think that way, right?
Yes. Think about what you create, how your day lives into that belief. And every person that she interacted with felt that. She was present. She was with you. She was connecting.
Yeah. It's as if she was on a different level. I mean, because it's almost how I've seen her in interviews. I mean, it really is, magic is the right way to describe it. It's almost like she's not a normal human being. I mean, she's like an angel on earth. You know.
There's a term, bodhisattva, and it describes what you're saying, somebody who has actually died but chosen to stay to share their lessons. And it was the closest term I ever felt like that really could sum it up. Yeah. I would see people who'd meet her for the first time and feel her hug and just break into tears or just sob with gratitude, because it was so pure and it was so filled with love. And it was just such a gift to be able to watch that impact on so many. And yet when you thanked her or acknowledged it, she would see in each of her students and friends their unique light and encourage that and the work that they can do in this world by connecting with that.
Yeah, it's as if she had not only so much of her own light to share, but she actually brought out the light in others. So that's an amazing quality.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So actually one of the main reasons that I wanted to chat with you today is because as I've mentioned to you before, I'm embarking on this project on aging to help women, mostly women, embrace aging and getting older. So talking not only about how we can extend our health span and lifespan and longevity from a health perspective, but also how to have the mindset that it takes to age awesomely. And so what I'd like to do now is to switch over to some of Tao's views and your views also on aging in a graceful and beautiful way. So first question actually I have is, what beliefs do you think that Tao had to embrace aging and not worry about getting older?
Well, she was quoted as saying, as I mentioned, I don't believe in age. I believe in energy. And she would think it was really funny that people made such a big deal out of her number. She did want to live to 100. She had a plan to have a celebration in India with 100 elephants and 100 friends, and a Maharaji there wanted to throw it for her. And she would say in every workshop, and you're all invited. Her 100th celebration ended up being in the States. But so she thought it was kind of a kick, a fun thing to say, I'm going to make it to 100, but not just make it to 100. I'm going to dance my way there. I'm going to breathe my way there, because she would share with her classes, every good breath you took in yoga, and I would add off the mat as well, added 1 year to your life without pain. And I would say she was such an amazing model for this, that any of her statements to that effect, what she was selling, I was buying.
Yeah.
So I would start to breathe in the way that she would be demonstrating. And she thought that there was more nutrient in the air if we all learned how to breathe really deeply, really beautifully, in a connected way. And it was why she was often not hungry, not thirsty. So when people after workshops would ask, like, what does Tao eat? How does she, what's her diet like? What's her approach to health? I would always share what we were talking about before, that she's kind of magical. Some of them may not apply to mere mortals. For example, Tao didn't drink water. Most of us really need water. She would drink tea or wine or juice or champagne, but not water. So she wouldn't need a lot of food. She didn't need a lot of external things for energy. She really, really harnessed the power of her breath. And as she got older, she didn't want to limit herself, mind, body, or spirit, by what was possible or what was typical. So if something happened and she needed a procedure, and the doctors or the rehab centers would say a pose or a dance move or something she couldn't do, she would do it, take a photo, and show the doctor, because she refused to listen to anyone who put limitations on her. And that example was so impactful. In fact, in one of the rehab centers, after she had a hip replacement surgery, well into her 90s, one of the rehab centers, she said, they're taking me down the hall for rehab now, but they're asking me if I can move a little bit this way, a little bit that way. So I just put my leg over my head so they can see what I'm capable of.
Oh, I bet you stunned many of those doctors and practitioners and everyone around.
And then they would have her come back and lead a workshop there. And all of the staff, when they weren't even on duty, would come in and sit with her and listen to her stories and try to learn from her. Her other students and I learned early on, if she had to go for a hospital visit or for a treatment of any sort, we would put photos of her doing incredible yoga poses or dance moves on the walls, so that they knew they were dealing with this incredible human, and not be driven by the number, the chronological number that she showed on her chart.
Right.
I think she was 97 when she was the cover girl on an Athleta catalog for their campaign, The Power of She. She's had huge billboards in Times Square. An incredible yoga photographer, Robert Sturman, he fell in love with Tao and did some beautiful photo shoots with her. And some of his images were building size billboards in New York City. I mean, she literally and figuratively was larger than life, even though she was very petite in stature. So what helped her age, and I would say age in air quotes, because she really seemed timeless, was the fact that she lived into her possibility and never her limitations. And the reason I called my book, My Guru Wears Heels, is she did it all in high heels. She led a group to Machu Picchu, and she laughed that she climbed Machu Picchu in heels and she got up there faster than many of the people in their sneakers. And once in a workshop where I assisted her, it was right after her surgery, and some of her friends begged her, can you just wear sandals for this weekend? It might be easier. I saw her stumble more than once, and she said, I tried to tell them I can't walk in these things, and I never tried to take away her heels again.
Oh, that's hilarious. So she is obviously better with heels, but I think what you said was very interesting, because obviously I'm in health and nutrition, and a lot of people look to someone, who's living to 100 years old and who's healthy, happy, and thriving, and they want to know what they eat, because
yes.
The blue zones, when we study the blue zones, we want to understand what these centenarians were eating their entire lives. And there's something to say about being in a high vibration energetically, because you can pretty much get away with a lot more than you can get away with when you're not happy or when you're stressed. And so she was obviously emanating happiness, and she had a high vibe. And so I think
absolutely
her power of belief also plays into it as well, because if she believes that juice is going to be, and she doesn't drink water, and that's going to be her fuel, and that's going to work for her, then it actually does work, because she doesn't believe any differently. Whereas the rest of us kind of know that that's probably not the right thing, so we know that it wouldn't work.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the blue zones, because think about how most of us have to go to a place like I honeymooned in Costa Rica. So I know that feeling of the Pura Vida and the blue zone and the happiness there, and their connection with the rainforest and their food. And their food was so gorgeous, both in ingredients, qualities, and how you felt the vibration of it. So most of us can put ourselves in a physical location and experience that in that environment. Tao was her own blue zone.
Yeah.
She could be in the midst of New York City with traffic and things happening by her. When they had that International Yoga Day and she's doing yoga in Times Square, you feel it just being in her energy center. So often how we process and digest anything, food, energy, information, really has to do with who we're being and how we're being in that moment. And because she lived her life in a higher vibration that we can all aspire to and learn from, and really take bits from and incorporate them into our lives right now. It's the perfect example that you don't need the perfect conditions to create a different environment where you are with what you have right this moment.
Yeah, you can be at peace anywhere. No, that's excellent. So, how did Tao deal with any physical, because you mentioned she had a hip replacement, in her 90s. How did she deal with these physical issues and difficulties? And how did she manage it in her mind? And knowing that she has, I wouldn't say a handicap, but at some points in time, it probably did feel like a handicap. How did she manage that?
She managed it very gracefully. So once there was a crew from a Russian television station who wanted to film her, and she had the signature pose she did for a lot of interviews and photos, and it was a peacock pose, which is why on the cover of my book, I actually have a peacock feather, because since she's passed away, it's been so beautiful that I get peacock signs when I really miss her or need her. Well, there's this peacock pose, which you can envision. Imagine a plank, like the top of a push-up, but your feet are lifted off the ground. And she could do that, balancing her entire body weight on the joints of her wrists well into her 90s. So for this interview, they were asking her to do it and hold it a number of times so that they could get the shot right. And on the last time, her wrist broke. And so after that, she was in her late 90s at that point. She didn't demonstrate that pose personally after that. It was one of the few times I saw that an injury actually got in her way of doing a posture, yet it never got in her way of teaching it, leading it, inspiring others what was possible. In fact, how relatively quickly her wrist healed served to be another example of inspiration. She had multiple hip replacements. She had the broken wrist. And she had a lot of things that would stop people decades younger than she, but they never stopped Tao. If they paused her in any part of it, she would just activate another part.
Okay, so if she, for example, what would she do if, and if she broke her wrist, how would she behave, or where would she kind of channel her excitement and her peace instead of?
She would never stop teaching, and she would never stop dancing. So she would dance with and through the broken wrist. She would teach with more verbal cueing and with assistants demonstrating the poses. Nothing would stop her. In fact, the way she started ballroom dancing was she showed up to teach a class in a snowstorm, and she taught inside a dance studio. So on this day, because of a snowstorm, she and the dance instructor arrived, but the students hadn't. So the dance instructor looked at her and said, well, Tao, you always said you wanted to learn the Argentinian tango. Why not start today? There was nothing that could happen where Tao didn't look for the good and therefore find it. Her husband would call her a Pollyanna because she said in every calamity, there's something good. Yep. So this approach to life was so much more than physical, but if something physical showed up, she would shift the gears either physically into what was working and go there. If her wrist was bothering her, she would show a lot of standing poses. So nothing ever limited her in who she could reach and how she could reach them. Wow. Because with her, it was really, absolutely, in everything. And also the balance with which she lived her life. So Tao was the celebrated wine judge. And the same word in Sanskrit for wine was the same word as hope. So she would say, where there is wine, there is hope. And she would love to share a good bottle of wine with friends and toast. And while I never really saw it affect her in the way where I would see Tao tipsy, she just had this approach to life that was childlike, that was really in the moment, that was really grateful. So one of my big visions, and I don't want to be a spoiler because the story is in the book and it's a significant one, but I had this vision of connecting two huge sources of inspiration in my life, which were Tao and Tony Robbins. So the fact that he gave us this beautiful endorsement quote for the back of the book and then shared it on social media a couple weeks ago and recommended that everyone get the book was such a full circle dream come true for me. Because when I saw the two of them meet for the first time and you saw their eyes connect, it was so cool to watch two people who do the same work, maybe with different methodology, but the same work of impacting and inspiring the world. And it was like watching a spiritual first date, like spiritual soulmates, I called it. And it was what she saw in Tony is definitely what I presume he saw back in Tao, which was this childlike approach. And in yoga terms, we call that beginner's mind, where if you could approach every pose, or as Tao did every day, with beginner's mind, you approach it with the newness and the wonder of discovering something for the first time.
Right. Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. And I think that's the right way to have it. If you think of children, the way that they look at things, or when we're traveling, we're very present, very engaged in the moment. And we notice new things, we look at things more with a curious mindset. And so when we have that curiosity and almost like the novel love, it really does change our persona in that moment. So yes, I could not agree with you more. You mentioned Tao's husband. What do you think, or do you know if her love life had any impact on her aging well?
By the time I met Tao, she had been married twice, and both husbands had died before I met her. So I never knew Tao within the context of her relationships, except from her stories. I share about both of them in the book, but through the lens of the stories she told me. Yeah. So while I love to share our story, I never am so presumptuous to think this is her story, because Tao lived 101 years and my time with her was only a slight portion of that comparatively. So I really, whenever I've shared and explained my sharing of this story, I say it's kind of like Eat, Pray, Love and Tuesdays with Morrie Had a Baby. There were two books that I loved, I related to because I love and admire The Older and the Wiser. And because I so related to Elizabeth Gilbert's journey, I had even been to India and lived in Italy. I just haven't been to Indonesia yet. So when I was reading her book, I remember thinking, wow, I think I lived this with her. She doesn't know we're kind of best friends in my mind. So this book, when I wrote it, My Guru Wears Heels, is really Tao's life to the degree that I experienced it through her and with her, through her stories. So in her love, when she would talk about her first husband, her eyes would light up like your first love, your first crush. It was so consuming. You would feel it. You would feel the shift in her. When she would speak about her second husband, it was with respect and admiration and appreciation. You could tell she just thought he was a really good man. So it felt like all-consuming, magical, just that movie kind of love for husband number one. And then with her second, it felt like a settled, calm, stable love with her second. And the lessons learned from each of them were really significant. For example, one of Tao's messages was that procrastination is the only sin. That anything we want to do in this life, we need to do it now. That tomorrow doesn't exist. 1 minute after midnight, it's already today again. There's no such thing as tomorrow. And with her second husband, they had put off doing a trip to India for a really long time. And when he agreed to do it, he passed away before they got to do it together in this one special trip. So she used that often as an example that he was such a good person, did so much outward for other people, and would procrastinate on some of the things that were significant to and for him. So I don't know if there was a single example of something that Tao lived in her life where she didn't find that lesson, that takeaway that she could learn from and thereby teach others.
Wow. And also what's interesting is that, a lot of times when people look back on prior relationships, they don't always have a positive association with something that they've ended. And it sounded like she only embraced the beautiful and positive experiences and memories. And the rest, obviously we have different paths and we change. So it sounds like she really just harnessed the positive memory only, which is, again, back to her positivity. I mean, it just shines through everything she does and even how she thinks. One of the things that I'm doing in my project called HypnoAging is helping women not only to embrace getting older, but to help them to remove the fear of losing the attachment to youth's outer beauty and kind of harnessing that inner beauty. And that is not easy to do, especially in 2021 when we're bombarded with social media and everything about beauty is young. And so, it's not always easy to think about getting older and what that means for beauty. So I just love to know if you have any ideas or memories of how Tao approached this and if she had any transition from attaching to youth's outer beauty and into more of harnessing her inner beauty.
Lindsay, I love that you are doing this as a project, and I thank you. I am the mother of a daughter my daughter is physically very beautiful. So often when we will walk down the street, people will say, oh, she's so beautiful. I'm like, thank you. She's also a Brazilian jiu-jitsu girl. She's a surfer. She's smart. She's kind. She's powerful. She's the class president. So much of it as a woman and a young girl is focused on our exterior. And not only is the emphasis on youth with this whole social media landscape, it's also filtered, unrealistic, unattainable versions of beauty. And that sets such a dangerous expectation So please continue with this because it is really important. And there is some parts of this answer that might surprise you because they might sound a little funny or surprising. Tao, there were aspects of Tao that were very vain, and vain in the best possible way, because a certain amount of vanity helps us to really respect and appreciate our physical bodies. So when we were traveling through India on a yoga retreat, it was such a beautiful experience to see India through the lens of Tao's eyes and her experiences and her stories, and to meet her friends. And when you travel through India with Tao, you get a different kind of red carpet experience rolled out for you. But I also would laugh because if we had a flight that was at 5 or 6 a.m., the rest of us were dressed like yogis, comfortable pants, travel outfits. And then Tao would walk in head to toe in leather with a scarf around her neck, high heels on, and sunglasses. And to her, as a former model and actress, and she just saw that feeling, that elegance made her feel good.
Yeah.
It made her stand tall, literally and figuratively, in her heels, and walk through life with a stature, with a posture of confidence. And from that place, you could tell that she felt the most herself. It wasn't beauty for beauty's sake. It was for pleasure. So these things, just like you said, in terms of how she could digest something like juice that we might think, oh, that's just a cup of sugar. For her, it was just another aspect of fruit of sustenance and pleasure. And she would take it in as such, and it probably was responded to differently in her body because of that. So it's not always the what, it's also the why. So whereas she would dress to feel elegant and to enjoy it, it really was for the pleasure. So often we would go to a yoga workshop and Tao would wear these big, gorgeous earrings, her large Ganesh pendant on her neck. She had full makeup on and her heels and her beautiful scarves. And it was less about what we see so often today, impressing others and doing something for an exterior satisfaction or an external praise. It was because that was how she felt the most expressed. So if we look at things like that, beauty, fashion, as we age, in terms of what sets our hearts on fire, instead of what's trendy, what's expected, what's a societal view on beauty, it activates something different within us, and therefore how it impacts others.
Right. And that's such a beautiful way to look at it, because I think, people think, okay, if I lose that attachment to youth's beauty, then I'm going to let myself go and I'll deteriorate. And so for her, it was just, I'm going to do whatever I feel like doing to have fun, however I want to look, what makes me feel good, regardless of what anyone else expects. And I just love it. So
yes.
That's excellent. So how do you think in this age in 2021 with people who are very much more attached to all of the glorious outer beauty and, like you said, filters and all of this stuff, how do you think they can transition to letting themselves go? Just do what makes their heart tick?
Yes. And if you can do that in a way without shaming yourself for the choices you make, if you want to run a marathon and being in that kind of physical form makes you happy, do it. Yeah. If you love to practice yoga every day outside on the beach in the ocean, do it. So it's that feeling like I love fitness in a way that's experiential. So I'm now currently living on the beach. Doing yoga, watching the waves is magical to me. Stand-up paddle is a moving meditation for me. Last night, riding my bike to the Marine Center with my little boy on the back so that he could pet stingrays was my form of fitness. Yeah. So if we approach our lifestyle as a whole and not as segmented, so beauty and how we feel physically and who we're being and how we're showing up doesn't have to be the separate entity. It's just another expression of this. So in my case, as I mentioned, the fitness, it doesn't have to be going to the gym and having it look a certain way or in a certain yoga studio for an hour every day with a discipline to my practice that adds a rigidity. It's part of this life overall, how I want to feel, who I want to be, what I want to give, what I want to do. It's all connected. So in terms of aging today, I've now been with my husband for 15, 16 years. So we've had decades together through the end of my 20s, the whole of my 30s, and now my 40s. So there are things in terms of your physical form that shift when you're together that long. He laughs and tells me his hair is grayer because of me. I say, you're welcome, because it's cute. But I dye the gray in my hair. That's a part that I don't necessarily want to embrace. I like my hair darker. It's a preference. Yeah. It's a preference. In the beginning of COVID, I was not dyeing my hair. I saw more gray than I had before. And I thought, oh, cool. Look at this. My kids would joke about it. So having a lightheartedness to the things that are happening in your body is a great way to be, because there are things that we do have control over and things we don't. And if you can approach them with a sense of humor and less of a seriousness, you will enjoy them differently. So if I trade the things that I saw or had when I first met my husband in my 20s, it's interesting because would I trade the stretch marks I have now from having two amazing humans with him? Never. So all of the years and the moments and the magic we've experienced, that comes with the aging. The way that I feel like I know my truer self more, I wouldn't trade for anything. The wisdom you get cannot be overstated. So when they say youth is wasted on the young, I might have butchered the saying, but something to that effect. I remember Kurt Vonnegut's speech where he said, embrace the power and beauty of your youth. Forget it. By the time you realize that, it will long since gone. And I'm thinking, it's true. We never realize how beautiful we are in the moment until we look back anyway. So if you could practice the habit, even if you have to start general, if you have insecurities about how you look, how you feel, your age, your weight, your height, anything, start general. Start with gratitude. I'm thankful for this physical body to express this beautiful life. I'm thankful for my feet to hold me, to feel grounded and connected. I love my legs that move me through this world. I love my heart to feel the love that I'm blessed to experience. I love my mind to think of these new ideas. I love my hands and arms to hug and to receive everything that's coming. Start general, and you will start to appreciate your physical skin, your beauty, more than you can imagine. And if that doesn't work, picture yourselves 20, 30, 40 years in the future, looking back and thinking, why didn't I realize how amazing I was then? And start that practice now. Because even Tao, one of my biggest sources of inspiration in my life, and another one, as described in the book, my grandmother lived into her 80s, was super strong, confident, amazing. Both of them were pretty vain. So even Tao would say things like at 100, she would laugh and talk about when she would talk about someone being very well developed in the chest in yoga poses, she would make a joke. Oh, if you have a lot of people on the balcony, she would describe it. That cracked me up every time. Once at a workshop, she said, my breasts aren't standing up the way they used to. She was 100 at the time. So if you can't find the humor in aging, I looked at her and I said, Tao, even if that's the case, I think they've had a great run.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. No, I love this. I think, even I will watch this again. Like there's so much good nuggets of wisdom from not only from Tao's perspective, but also from yours as well. And I honestly don't think that Tao or the universe could have picked a better person to have been her mentee and to share her wisdom, because it's not only about sharing her wisdom. I think you also have a lot of really nice things to share. So it's been amazing. I have a couple more questions, but I also have kids that I will inherit in about 4 minutes. So I will try to speed this up. Tell me, how did Tao view death? And how was she able to kind of, live her life knowing that at some point she will pass?
Okay. And don't worry with the littles, because this is something that I can answer pretty concisely.
Okay.
A child asked her in a workshop what she would do when she retired or what she thought about. And she said she had no intentions of retiring. Then she was asked what would happen when she died. And she said she would simply dance her way to the next planet. She never approached death with any bit of trepidation or fear. She just looked at it like the next adventure. So I was grateful because when she passed away, and my dear friend, another mentee, Renee Diamond, she called me. I was on vacation, and my sister was holding my hand when I got the message that she had passed. And Renee left a long message describing how it happened. I heard it at 11:11 while on a chairlift on top of Vail Mountain, going through snow-capped trees, holding my sister's hand and crying. And my sister said, "Look where you are. How better could this have happened? This is exactly what you always wished." That it would be on her terms in a peaceful way. And the fact that it was even before COVID, that she was never restricted in teaching or dancing, was another blessing. So she never saw death as something to fear. She really saw it as the next adventure. And she really, in actual words, said her plan was to dance her way to the next planet. So that is all I see her doing. Yeah. And I see her in every peacock, in every smile. And my daughter is named Natasha Tao after Tao. So I see a lot of her fierce, just views on the world living through her as well.
Oh, that's stunning. Well, I had so much more that I wanted to ask you, but we'll stop here, and maybe at some point we'll do it again. But how can people find out more about you, and what are you? I mean, I know you're doing some keynote speaking, and you've got your book, My Guru Wears Heels, and I couldn't get it in time for this interview because I live in Mauritius. So, but definitely it's coming, and I'm so excited to read it and to get into it. But how can people find out more about you?
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Lindsay. I have a website called myguruwearsheels.com that can give you a direct link to the book on Amazon. It also gives you a space to put your email address, because if you do, often I'll do complimentary workshops, or on Thursday mornings, I do a free 30-minute yoga session in Tao style, just to keep community together, which was her big intention. On there, it's a great way for people to book me if they want any keynote speeches or workshops or exclusive retreats, which Mauritius sounds perfect for. So maybe we can do a retreat and workshop there. That would be amazing.
It's beautiful.
And then I am on social media. So Instagram, it's Joanna Raj. Facebook, Joanna Rajendren, my whole hard to spell name. And I just got on TikTok yesterday, but I don't know what to do with it yet.
You just gotta dance and do yoga, I think, right? So
okay, I'll start with those two things then.
Yeah. And maybe you can do like, what are they, a holograph of Tao and you at the same time. I don't know. I'm sure I'd have to do that, but that would be fun, huh?
You just gave me weekend goals. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, good luck with that. It's been such a pleasure, and I'm so excited for your wisdom and Tao's to be shared with the rest of the world. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Joanna.
You are so welcome. Thank you for helping me with my mission to do just this, and go enjoy your littles as you get them back. Do this beautiful work, Lindsay. People really need to know that their beauty comes from inside. And when they know that and feel that, aging is just another year they get to be that.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Such a beautiful.
You're welcome.
All right. So you take care. Blessings to you. And we will talk another point in time. All right.